Today on the Snack Covenant.
We talked about Jinro, which is this like dystopian sort of like police state noir like thriller. At the end of it, you asked like, are there any shows that are like Jinro? And the best I could come up with is like, well, Dominion is kind of the comedy version of Jinro. So if you want to see like kind of the same stuff about like increasing police militarisation and like oppression of people and stuff like that, and people sort of losing their like humanity by joining the police force, but you also want to laugh. Dominion.
Hi Sophie.
Hi Sin.
Hi everyone. And welcome to It Can't Be Helped, Episode 2. Now, I'd like everyone to close your eyes. Imagine you're standing on a giant mushroom. And as you look into the distance, you see two figures descend from the sky. Reveal yourselves, mysterious figures!
Oh my gosh, it's so great to be here. Hi, I'm Alex.
Hey, this is Blixa.
And we're from the PenPenPals show, and Sin and Sophie have been on our podcast a few times, and we're happy to return the favor.
Aw, welcome, and thank you for coming. And today, we're of course going to talk about Season 2 of Katekyo Hitman Reborn!
Finally!
My favorite season.
PenPenPals, could you please tell us about yourself?
Blixa, you want to go first?
I'm a life coach counselor over at lifejutsu.com, and I do anime podcasting with Alex and Ben, but Ben tried to talk about something not anime, so we got rid of him.
Yeah, he's on hiatus for the week. I'm Alex. I maintain a household and do this anime podcast. And I play a lot of From Software games. Some might say too much.
Late at night, I think of you. Your vision floods my mind.
Dominion started off as a one-shot manga by Masamune Shirow, who people will probably best know for Ghost in the Shell. Came out in the late 80s. The video that we're watching was an adaptation of that came out in 1991. And then it got an English release in 1993. And it was one of the... I don't think if Blixa or Alex ever saw it.
No, not until you suggested it.
Yeah, this is the weird thing about, like, Anglo anime stuff, because, like, there was two different sets of things everyone got. So, like, over here, we got, like, this and that Devilman dub everyone's memeing and, like, Oedo and stuff like that. But we didn't get, like, Slayers or any of the really things that were really big in the US. So when I finally got online and I was talking to other anime fans from the US, like, we had nothing in common at all. It was bizarre.
Whoa!
Yeah. So Dominion's one of the ones that came out. I think it was pretty much just an Anglo thing. It was distributed by Manga UK, which is a recurring theme whenever I talk about anime. And consequently, it features a number of cast members from Dark Souls.
This is Satire.
Now that I am undead, I have come to this great land, the birthplace of Lord Gwyn, to seek my very own son.
This is also Satire.
Get lost. You wouldn't recognize a goddamn vampire if one jumped up and bit you on the end of your fucking dick.
Welcome to the Dominion Outline. Question 1 is, why are we talking about Dominion specifically?
The reason that we're doing Dominion specifically is, like, it wasn't the last time, it was the second last time we were on PenPenPals. We talked about Jinro, which is this, like, dystopian sort of, like, police state noir like thriller. And at the end of it, you asked, like, are there any shows that are like Jinro? And the best I could come up with is, like, well, Dominion is kind of the comedy version of Jinro. So if you want to see, like, kind of the same stuff about, like, increasing police militarisation and, like, oppression of people and stuff like that, and people sort of losing their, like, humanity by joining the police force, but you also want to laugh. Dominion. I guess we can start by talking about the theme song, because I think we have to.
Tank Police! It's amazing.
The English Dominion theme song is a sight to behold.
I'm sure it was like a lowest cost situation and a get this thing out the door situation, but I think they nailed it.
Absolutely.
You're like, oh, okay, we're talking about tank police. Obviously, we're gonna examine the legal and philosophical ramifications of this. No, you need a cheerleader song. Tank
Yes.
police feel our power. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
And then there's the Japanese is on the alternating episodes, which is called Hot Dance in Cherry Moon. I think the tank police name is actually just the Western one. I think it's just called Dominion in Japan, like regardless.
Oh, interesting. Because like Dominion is something that doesn't show up, right?
They never say the word Dominion in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, it's like the last boss in Tank Police is a big guy, and his name is Dominion.
Oh, of course, yeah.
My boyfriend finished playing God of War Ragnarok,
Yeah.
and oh no, that's a spoiler.
Spoilers ahead.
Ragnarok's been around a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ragnarok is a guy.
What?
Ragnarok is a
He's
guy?
a guy?
No,
It's
it
the
is not.
guy that shows up.
It's a Twilight. It's an event. Okay, so they made it a guy. Okay.
It's just some guy who's like, "Hey, I'm Ragnarok. I'm here to kill some people. What's up?"
We haven't really talked about the premise of the show at all.
Yeah.
Tank Police.
Okay, the theme song pretty much does it. They're police, they have tanks.
Yeah.
So Dominion is set in the far future year of 2010.
Nice.
It's set in a city called Newport, which I believe it has like a canonical location somewhere in Japan, but I don't have it with me.
Okay.
That like lists like it's actually supposed to be this specific city.
Oh.
So there is a thing called the bacterial cloud that is covered, from what we can tell, about like the northern hemisphere. Basically, it's just a big cloud of what they call bacteria. Calling it bacteria is a little weird because if you look at like the manga and the source book, it specifies it's just pollution.
Okay.
There is like a cloud over the top half of the earth. Consequently, like you don't see much like light when they're outdoors. It's just sort of perpetual night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the sky is sort of weird shades of red. Because there is this bacterial cloud over the city, everyone in it has to constantly wear these masks that help them sort of breathe the air. There's a few scenes of the police using mask rules to abuse people, which sort of hits a little differently now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because of the bacterial cloud, everything in the city is sort of like it's grown to resist the bacteria. So the city itself does not look like a cyberpunk city you would imagine. It looks like a coral reef. Everything looks like sort of like clams and like weird spires, and the buildings are all sort of spherical. And the same thing is true of the tanks.
Yeah.
They are very, very rounded. They have sort of, instead of having tracks, they just have these spheres that sort of rotate, that they move around on.
Which still managed to tear up the asphalt on the city streets.
Yeah. So in universe, the reason that it's like that is because it's this like special bioengineered grown plastic that will absorb the cloud.
Interesting.
Yeah. So everything in the city just looks really, really strange.
It does have a really distinctive art style, and
Yeah,
I wondered
yeah.
if that's just the artist, the creator, or if that, I guess it has a specific reason here. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, Shiro tends toward like sort of rounded things,
Okay.
much like, you know.
Oh,
He likes that
yes.
stuff.
Okay.
He has a whole little paragraph about, like, here's why all the androids in my show are sexy ladies. It makes sense in context, trust me.
She has to breathe through her skin.
Okay, so the rough story of Dominion that we're watching, it's sort of a game of halves. Like, there's sort of like 2 episodes about the main character Leona, and there's 2 episodes about a criminal gang. So the premise is that there's a rookie motorcycle cop. She's called Leona Ozaki, and she's transferred to the tank police, which is the police's special unit that are armed with tanks, because in Newport City there is a crime every 36 seconds. And the best way to deter that is to literally give the police a tank division. A lot of the sort of comedy of Dominion, it's like very slapstick, and that comes from the police just driving tanks around cities, like destroying buildings, running over cars, ripping up the asphalt, and then saying, okay, we caught them. And the recurring joke throughout it is like they're doing significantly more damage.
Sophie, their heart is in the right place, okay?
Yeah. It's just this repeated scenes of like it's like that idea of like, I don't play by the book, but I get results.
Yes,
Yeah.
but an
Taken to
entire
this
team.
complete extreme where they're like leveling entire blocks to catch one person.
So I have a question about that. Like,
Yeah.
do the streets and buildings grow back?
It would make the city more sustainable.
They probably wouldn't grow back after what happens to them. I mean, you just see them like sink into the ground.
They topple entire buildings.
The opening of the show is like there's a heist at a hospital where there's this very kind of like scummy, like lowbrow criminal gang. Consists of this sort of like short, like sort of weird looking middle-aged guy called Baku. And with him he has these two, they're artificially grown humans. They're like replicants from Blade Runner.
Okay.
And it's these two identical twin cat girls called the Puma sisters, who used to be strippers. The opening scene is them attacking a hospital to steal urine samples.
Amazing.
And during the heist to get the urine back, the tank police destroy a large part of the city. And due to a series of mishaps, Leona ends up inside the tank police chief's enormous war machine that he calls the Tiger Special. Because she's used to driving little tiny motorcycles, she doesn't quite know how to handle it, and consequently the Tiger Special is destroyed, leading the police chief to have a complete breakdown.
It has a kanji on the front of it, which I think is just means violence.
Yeah. The police chief is... I love him. Lieutenant. His name is
great.
Lieutenant Britton. Yeah. He's introduced reading a book called
How to Kill.
And he's introduced doing that while torturing a suspect.
Mhm.
No, Sophie, it's an advanced interrogation
Oh,
technique.
yes. He
Right,
clarifies
right.
it. So the advanced interrogation technique he's using is that he puts a grenade in their mouth and makes them stand on a bucket. And
It
Yeah.
ran out as a live grenade.
a
pretty
live
quickly.
grenade. And then they they hit things at him with a golf club. An attempt to knock the bucket out from under him, which will cause him to fall and his head to blow off.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all played for laughs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Normal police
This
stuff.
is normal. They're all hanging out. It's just a bunch of guys hanging out, having fun, torturing someone. And then Leona shows up and ruins their fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the sort of arc of the start of it is like Leona starts off wanting to like she's just appalled sort of by what is happening. But then she has some character development where over the first couple of episodes she gradually learns that this is actually all right and very enjoyable. So by the end of it, she's just all in on just like smashing stuff and breaking things. And the climax of her character development is when they're being chewed out by the mayor for destroying large chunks of the city, and Leona responds by pulling out a rifle and blowing the book out of her hand, which is exactly like that McBain bit in The Simpsons.
Yeah.
She just does the like buy a book and blows it up.
Oh my god.
Wow.
Yeah. And anyway, Leona uses the wreckage of Lieutenant Britton's old tank to build a new tank called Bonaparte that's like much, much smaller. And it's closer to handling like a motorcycle because she's a motorcycle cop, right?
Right.
So then we have like the second half of the series shifts the focus toward the criminal gang. And it's a lot different in tone. Like it's still a comedy, but there's parts of it that feel like they're from Ghost in the Shell.
Mm-hmm.
Where it turns out like Baku is also artificially created along with the Puma sisters. But he was artificially created as part of something called Project Greenpeace, which was an attempt to make humans who could survive the bacterial cloud. And it becomes about like him attempting to reconcile like who he is, because he was sort of vat grown as an adult and he doesn't really have a childhood. He just came into the world one day with no memory. He is sort of seeking this. It's like there's like a painting of him that was done when he was created. And it becomes about him trying to find this painting. That he's just like, this is the closest thing I have to a birth certificate.
Yeah.
And because that painting was created before the bacterial cloud settled over the world, it's worth an enormous amount of money.
Right.
Because it's like the last thing that was made before the world went to hell.
Yeah.
And there is this sort of debate within the show about like what the value of it is. Like, is that why it's valuable, or is it the monetary value, or is it the value to Baku?
And then there's a secret value too,
Yes,
because it
there
is like
Yeah.
the data from the project that
The
creates
data
it.
from the project's encoded in the picture. And this leads to another like faction called the Red Commandos coming in, trying to like steal this valuable picture. It's got all this data in it. The Tank Police and Baku kind of join together to like liberate the picture from the Red Commandos. And then at the end of it, they basically blow the picture up.
Awesome.
Yeah, because they are this like Baku goes through an arc where he's like, I don't actually need this anymore. They talk about like, well, if they want the picture that badly, it's probably because they want the data in it, and I don't want anyone else to have the data, so they just blow the picture up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it ends with a scene that must be massively confusing to anyone who hasn't read the manga, where Baku finds the ruins of the lab, and there's a pod in it, and in the pod is a sort of like nude green fairy lady who's on screen for about 2 seconds, and then it just ends.
It goes totally cosmic and with no explanation.
Yeah. So that character is like very important in the manga. She is kind of way more foregrounded. And Sin brought up earlier, she's kind of like Quiet from Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, she breathes through her skin.
Okay.
Yeah, so the reason that the lady is green is because she is half human, half plant.
Oh.
And the reason she is like that is so that they can start engineering people who are half plant, half human, because they will have that like plant respiration. So if they're outside, they'll suck the pollution into themselves and breathe oxygen out.
Oh.
Basically, they created trees.
Yes.
Just
They
moving
ran out.
people
There's no
trees.
trees left, so they had to make like tree people.
Nice.
Yeah, that is not in this.
Oh my god, is it Dark Souls 3?
Kind of.
Nice.
Yeah. And in the manga, like, there's the excuse, like, okay, she's got to suck up as much pollutant as possible, so she clearly has to be naked all the time.
At least they gave a reason for it.
There you
Usually
go,
they
yes.
don't.
Yes.
I'm usually naked when I'm sucking stuff up. So. Oh, I didn't ask what the rating is on this show. Oh wait, you're on YouTube. Okay, I meant like vacuuming. No, I don't vacuum naked. I needed something to save this.
It's okay. I have a way to save this.
Okay.
And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat upon the cloud, Thrust in thy sickle and reap, for the time is come for thee too.
Here are top 8 Cremaster Cycle fan theories that turned out to be true. Spoiler warning in effect.
Thank you, Sin.
Amazing. That's what we need. We need a soundboard for more silliness.
Awesome.
So this tree lady, she's an artificial being, but not in the same way as Buaku and the Puma sisters.
Baku is like he's like the first generation that they made that didn't quite work out.
Oh, okay.
And then the Puma sisters, I think, were specifically designed to be like pleasure models, like in Blade Runner.
Okay.
Which is why they're these like Amazonian like cat girls.
They look like Pris too, right?
Yeah.
And contrary to Blade Runner, it sounded like they don't have expiration dates because Buaku says like, well, that was 80 years ago, thinking back to his creation.
Yeah.
And there's one scene I really like the poetry of the one scene where the Puma sisters are fighting against the Red Commando the first time you meet him, because it's a man inside a robot suit fighting robots inside of man suits.
Yes.
Which I thought was really cute.
Yeah. It's deep.
Mm. And yeah, it's like there's whole scenes, like if you just saw them written out as dialogue, you'd assume it was Ghost in the Shell. These long scenes about like what is the nature of memory, and like if you're born into the world without memory, do you have sin, and things like that.
You know, when I saw that movie, I thought those little moments of philosophizing, I thought it was so unrealistic. And then I met Alex, and I was like, oh, sometimes people just sit around and talk about like all this cosmic shit.
This stuff is pretty deep. I mean, the satire here in this show is brilliant. Like it is, it's played for comic effect, but it is about, like you said, police brutality. Man, it starts off like maybe my favorite moment in the whole, or my favorite scene in the whole thing was the opening argument between the police chief and the politician. And the politician is like, well, you're being too rough. We shouldn't have tanks. And the police chief's like, you gave us the tanks to begin with, which is pretty apt for the real world.
Yeah.
And then in true satirical fashion, like she asks him, okay, what would you rather have instead of tanks? And he says, well, we should have nuclear weapons. Like every police force should have access to nuclear weapons. Like,
she's like, I think tanks are fine.
Yeah. And that's over a montage of like just photographs of increasing militarization. So it is actually situating it in like this is the next logical step. Like something we talked about when we talked about Jinro is that like Jinro is in part a response to like Japanese politics at the time. What like the time that Mamoru Oshii, who wrote it, was like he was like a student left-wing activist. And there were a lot of extremely brutal crackdowns from the police on that sort of activism. And Jinro was sort of his response to that. Like the whole Jinro's people don't know, like Jinro is part of a whole thing called the Kerberos saga that's basically like it's essentially like the police have tanks, but the tanks are battle suits. And it has a fandom that's like, oh, cool battle suit. Whereas the whole premise of like the series is like these suits are completely dehumanizing and like they make people into monsters and they make them lose empathy and kill the people who they used to care about and things like that.
Yeah, they literally see in all red when they're looking at perpetrators.
Yeah.
So can I ask a comparative question about this Dominion and Jinro?
Yeah.
So like initially I was thinking Dominion's message could probably be received better because it's a comedy. But then like Jinro's got like Alex was saying, like all these dazzling action scenes.
Yeah.
It's like maybe, now that I'm thinking about it, it seems like a way to get the same message out to different types of audiences.
I think they make amazing companion pieces because you can watch Jinro be depressed, then watch Dominion Police and be like, haha, the tank jumped into the air.
I was depressed after Jinro. God, that was harsh. Let's talk about these cat girls again.
It's something that people talk about in like literary and like film criticism that if something is so like absurdly horrifying, often the only way to get at the core of it is through comedy because you sort of can't process it.
The absurdity really cushions the blow.
Yeah. And again, like that's like other Shiro things. It was this Ghost in the Shell and Appleseed that came out around the same time. Like this is the most fun of them.
So using comedy to deliver something difficult to process. So I could use that in my practice too.
Yeah.
You know the funny thing about childhood trauma?
We all have it. But even in Dominion, there is kind of this this flip in tone or this juxtaposition. Like you said, there's the first two episodes which are very much Leona joins the tank police, and then there's the second two episodes which are like, who the hell is Buaku?
Yeah.
Gosh, they both are wonderful. I think the first two are much funnier because Buaku like gets into a kind of, you know, some questions about like, what is a person? Like, is Buaku a person? He's an artificial person, but he has memories, he has needs. And we even see, oh my gosh, when he like has the flashback to his creation and then they're going to, like the government comes in and they're like, just kill all of the artificial humans. Like the thing that saves him is need. He's thirsty, so he goes for this water, and that's what like leads him to salvation. Like, and and him even becoming a criminal is like this random happenstance of a woman throwing him some evidence that the police bring him in for. Which, you know, is very much how people actually get into crime.
Yeah.
It's not usually, oh, that's something I want to do. It's usually like, oh, this is the position you're in. These are the options you have.
Yeah.
And their legal options are not going to pay your bills.
Yeah, and again, like there's an arc across all four of them where like Leona and Buaku go through different developments where like Leona kind of like, it's a comedy, but she becomes less human by the end of it.
Yes.
Like
oh
she's lost most of her empathy and like inhibitions, and she's just destroying stuff. Whereas Baku, who starts as like the guy who's robbing a hospital to steal urine, ends up as like the most human of the characters.
Can we clarify that? Like, we didn't understand that on PenPenPals.
The urine.
Like, was it literally?
It's literally urine.
Yeah.
Okay, they go into this a little bit. But, like, you may have noticed, like, at the start of it, the doctor is saying, like, this hospital only treats healthy people.
Correct.
Like, hi, Lawrence.
What they're getting at is, like, because humans have been exposed to this bacterial cloud for so long, some people have started to develop an immunity to it. So, like, they're sick, but it doesn't matter. They're basically like humans are evolving into something that can live in pollution. So the notion of like the urine samples and everything is like they're trying to get cells from people who haven't been through that yet. That's why it's like this hospital's only for healthy people. Like we just want people who haven't developed the cloud immunity, like the whatever. It's not clear if it's like, is it antibodies, is it some sort of like genetic thing? But like basically humans evolved to a point like there's sort of no like they're looking for what are basically pure pre-cloud people who are increasingly rare because over time like resistance to the cloud is being bred more and more into the population.
And I wondered if maybe there was some sort of, if it implied a little bit of a knowledge dark age, because the doctor, who seems to be a nod to like Operation Paperclip, he seems like a very Nazi scientist. He even calls the lieutenant like your squad Führer. And like, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he looked just like the scientist, the Zentradi scientist from Macross. But anyways, I digress. So he says, like, by looking at urine, we can figure out what things do, like the kidneys. And the other guy says, well, yeah, but we already know what the kidneys do. And he says, yes, but now we're looking at things like the lungs. And I'm like, wait, why don't you know how the lungs work anymore or what their relationship is to urine? So, like, was there a bunch of lost data somewhere?
I don't know, because the thing is, it's like it was written in the late 80s.
Okay.
And it's set in 2010. So I'm not exactly sure what the gap is actually meant to have been.
Okay.
Because also weird, like you have Baku saying this was 80 years ago, which would imply he was made in the 1940s. So I'm starting to wonder if the whole 2010 thing is actually just that may just be in the English version and it's not in the original, because it makes no sense.
Interesting.
They bring back some old World War I tanks in it as well.
Oh my gosh, the tanks that Bwaku and the Puma sisters get, so awesome looking. They look like Land Raiders from Warhammer 40K, which I imagine are an old school like World War I design, right?
It's a World War I, I think it's a Mark V.
Oh, cool.
They were specifically, those were the first kind of tank that ever saw combat. That's why they use them, because it's like literally the oldest tank you can come up with. They're those ones, they have the tracks that go all the way around them, and like the guns are mounted on the side in these like pillboxes on the side.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And they to completely destroy the tank police when they get them.
Yeah.
Just like no contest.
Yeah. They're so completely inept.
Can you tell us what secret weapon defeated the tank police?
All right, so when the Bwaku gang are attacking the tank police in is it episode 3, I think, they are given these mysterious plates that look like 2 fused hexagons, which the guy who gives it to them describes. He calls them erectococci.
Oh my god!
And it's not really clear what they are. And then
are you sure?
Well, at this point, it's just 2 fused hexagons.
Right. And
then when the tank police are chasing the Bwaku gang, they release all the erectococci behind them. And they're basically like mines or caltrops or something. And as the tank police drive over, they inflate. And they are revealed to basically be giant.
What is it that inflates?
The erectococci. Then inflate, revealing them to be like just enormous condoms, essentially. There's just like huge like penis-shaped things just burst out of the ground.
Amazing.
And completely destroy the tank police.
I thought they were giant dildos.
Basically, that's it.
Too. Yeah.
I think it's a pro-sex worker message that what you need to defeat the police is dildos.
This is going to be our most risque episode yet.
Oh gosh. So I want to ask for clarification about something that's maybe obvious but eluding me. So like the environmental commentary, I get that. But then this concern about like humanity evolving, that feels like it's a commentary on something, but I'm just missing it.
I think it's a commentary on modern society being unable to deal with pandemics. And so we just live with them now.
Oh, God.
Which is a very prevalent message for now because, like, COVID's here. You know, it's here to stay. It's everywhere, and you can't get rid of it anymore because we failed to address it as a society because capital has no answer for these things.
Okay. Yes, that is very dark. Can you do it again as like a joke?
The thing about Capital is they've got no answer for systemic problems.
Okay, I'm sold. Alex, we have to get a soundboard.
Yeah, we need a soundboard. I think we need to hire Sin as our soundboardist.
Thank you.
There's the evolution of humanity, right? They're evolving to deal with this pollution, but research is maybe saying we need to take a step back and understand what people were like before the pollution.
Yeah.
But we also have this evolution of systems of morality. Like the tank police are an absurd but a logical conclusion of the military arms race in policing, populations. And Leona is our kind of lens into this, because when she first gets there, she's just kind of a mechanophile. Like she likes the machines, she likes her motorcycle, she's into that. But by the end of it, she is dressing, or by actually the second episode, I think, she's dressing up in a bunny costume to Vanna White their enhanced interrogation technique.
Yeah.
So they throw knives at a guy who has another live grenade in his mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder about that. So they're telling the guy, tell us about your crimes, your accomplices, but he has a grenade in his mouth. How's he going to talk?
You got it.
And then when he can't take anymore and does spit the grenade out, that's when it explodes. So, what was their plan here?
So I got a cross between RoboCop and Blade Runner vibes when I first watched this.
Blade Runner, definitely.
Yeah.
The main character, she did feel like an amalgam of Lewis and Murphy from RoboCop, but before Murphy turned into RoboCop, though.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because when she first shows up at the station, it does remind me of when Murphy first shows up at the station in RoboCop. Just it's so wild and chaotic.
Oh, that's true. And Murphy loses his humanity because of his, quite literally, his parts are exchanged. But Leona is kind of at odds morally with what they're doing at the beginning. But by the end of it, she only has eyes for Bonaparte. There was this kind of hinted at, will they, won't they? Maybe she'll go on a date with the young blonde guy. But at the end, when he comes back with Bonaparte to kind of save her, she's like, I don't care about you. You scratched my tank.
And the tank, we haven't mentioned this, but the tank police have a chaplain.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And he is so supportive of her. He's like, you've
delight.
learned the most valuable lesson of all, which is that tanks are more important than people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A very Jesus thing.
Yes, yes.
It's funny because it's her fervor ramps up, but it is this descent that we're seeing, like we're saying, the casting off of her own humanity.
Yeah. She casts it off while Boaku sort of discovers humanity.
Yes, amazing.
Which makes it sound not that funny. But it is.
When we first started our discussion, we were talking about the argument about the police getting more powerful stuff and then talking about getting nukes. So the criticism is this idea that more power would equal more safety or more law and order, but we don't see that.
No.
Right? Well, they say specifically when Boaku was negotiating for more things with his boss, he's saying, we need this because the police have this, so it becomes an arms race. So,
yes,
the police get increasingly militarized, criminals become increasingly militarized in response, and it ends up with the criminals also getting tanks, and it just turning the city into a war zone. Yeah.
Okay. The similarities between Dominion and Jinro, they're pretty striking, but what about the differences?
Well, there's no counterintelligence theme. That's a big plot of Jinro is who is doing the proper counterintelligencing work of anticipating the other side's next move. Whereas in this, it's a comedy, it's kind of sans intelligence. And so there's no plot line like that. The closest thing you get is you get a mention of secret police. Oh, and then there's the Red Commando. But the Red Commando is just, I think that's a statement on private militaries.
Yeah.
Yes, the police have access to tanks, but look at what these private security guards have. They have literal battle suits, not so dissimilar from the Jinro stuff, but much more anime. They can fly with them practically. And then he has access to a flying tank.
Yeah.
So the idea is that whether it's private military contractors or mercenary armies, they're less ethical.
They're not beholden to the same laws or rules. So like the police in this are monstrous, right? They blow up buildings, they tear up city blocks, they torture suspects, but they still have to fill out paperwork and stuff. But this private military contractor or this, security agent, the Red Commando, he doesn't have to fill out any paperwork. As long as his boss is happy, he can do what he wants, including kill people like on the streets if he needs to. Where at least theoretically, the police have to have some accountability, at least to the politician. Because like there's a big comedy scene about the chief is like finally done with his paperwork, and it's mountains and mountains of paperwork. Presumably he has to do that, whereas these private military contractors would not.
Also, like, it's a cyberpunk kind of trope in general of like, these corporations and individual people are now so wealthy that they're essentially more powerful than the government.
The laws are only as good as the force that can be wielded to enforce them, right? And so if somebody has enough money to buy off any police or judges or form a private military of their own, like, how are they beholden to any laws?
So what you're saying is one day the Snack Covenant can have its own military.
If you get a few more Patreons, then yes, absolutely you can. I would sign up for the Sin and Sophie private military.
Late at night, I think of you. Your vision floods my mind.
The villains of the tank police, it's 3 people. Up to the very end. The entire police division that has an army of tanks is incapable of apprehending 3 people who don't know what they're doing and have stolen an ambulance.
And by the end of it, they're the most human, and you're totally rooting for them.
Yeah.
And like the most climactic shot in it is not a tank police officer using their big flagship tank, but it's one of the Puma sisters.
Yeah.
Gets a hold of their brand new, it doesn't even look like an actual tank. It looks like an artillery vehicle, like, kind of a tank base, but with a howitzer on top of it.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Like, I love them.
Yeah.
Anyway, on to question 2.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Sophie, do the outro.
That was It Can't Be Helped, episode 2, Dominion Tank Police, with the PenPenPals. PenPenPals, do you want to tell us who you are and where people can find you?
Yeah, we're a podcast. We've been going for a couple of years. We don't make any money off of it yet, so it only comes out intermittently. But right now, we are releasing weekly our episodes on the Evangelion Rebuild movies, of which Sin and Sophie were graciously a guest on, I think it was Neon Genesis 1.0.
1.0, yeah.
You cannot advance. You cannot something. One of those things. You are not alone, maybe? Anyway.
I think so.
And coming up, keep your ears perked because Sin and Sophie will also guest on another episode that I haven't edited yet, but I'm really looking forward to editing about Jinro.
Yeah. And where can people find you on social media, stuff like that?
You're amazing. So you can find us like anywhere you get a podcast, PenPenPals. We distribute through SoundCloud, so that's the easiest way to find us. To just search PenPenPals. And
Can I clarify? Is it PenPenPals or is it PenPenPals Pod?
I think we're just PenPenPals is the name of it, but we on Twitter we're PenPenPals Pod, and we have a Gmail address which is also PenPenPalsPod@gmail.com.
Excellent.
And Blixa, was there anything? Did you need to plug anything?
I had a lot of fun.
Super awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Really, really appreciate it.
This was amazing. You two are awesome. And if you ever need somebody to step in on an anime, like, it's so much fun to talk to you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Sin.
Thank you, Blixa.
Thank you, Sin and Sophie.
Thank you, Sin and Sophie.
I have to say thank you, Alex.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Sin.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. And see y'all next time.
Bye.
Ciao, sir.
Ciao, Sue Knives.